Picture this. You wake up on a random weekday morning with a strange pain. Not intense, not dramatic, but enough to tell you something isn't right. Maybe it's a dull toothache, a slight tightness in your chest, or a low, lingering pain in your stomach that won't quite go away. You know that if you go to urgent care or see a dentist today, the bill will probably land around $300. Not a catastrophic number, not an emergency. But you also know your insurance deductible hasn't been met yet. You open your banking app. The balance shows less than $100 to get you through the week. Your brain immediately starts running the familiar math: food, gas, an upcoming bill you can't push off. You tell yourself it's probably just fatigue. I'll give it a few days. The pain isn't bad enough to justify calling it an emergency, but it's bad enough to make your stomach tighten. Not from the pain itself, but from the knowledge that the moment you walk through that clinic door, the number on the bill will be bigger than what you can handle right now. A few days pass. The pain doesn't go away. It quietly gets worse. One night, you can't sleep. The next morning, you no longer have a choice. You end up in the emergency room. This is no longer a $300 problem. Just the intake alone is over $1,000. Tests, medication, diagnosis. When the bill finally arrives, the number is north of $3,000. You can't pay it in full. You pay late. Part of it gets sent to collections. Your credit score drops a few points. Not enough to notice immediately, but enough that your insurance renewal costs more. Enough that the next apartment application asks for a higher deposit. Enough that future loans come with higher interest rates. That original pain didn't just create a medical bill. It triggered a chain of costs that stretches out for years. $300 didn't turn into $3,000 overnight. It turned into a quiet tax leaking out month after month, decision after decision. And this is the hardest part to accept. This isn't bad luck. This is friction with a price tag. You didn't delay care because you were irresponsible. You delayed because you didn't have a cash buffer. And the system doesn't care why. It only charges the fee. You're not poor because you lack discipline. You're poor because you're charged for not having money. In this world, even keeping your own body stable has a cost. And when you can't pay that cost at the right moment, you end up paying it for years afterward. And this is usually the part where I start to make people uncomfortable because what you're about to hear sounds very familiar. Just get insurance. Just go to the dentist regularly. Just budget for healthcare. I hear these lines everywhere. From financial YouTubers, from corporate HR departments, from people who genuinely believe they're being helpful. But there's one thing all of this advice has in common that almost no one says out loud. It only works if you already have a cash buffer. I spend way too much time thinking about the hidden mechanics of money, the small gears you never see, but that grind you down every single day. And one of the biggest gears is the way we talk about healthcare. Because in theory, the advice makes perfect sense. If you have insurance, you go early. If you go early, it's cheaper. If it's cheaper, it's less stressful. A clean, logical chain, on paper. But what does that look like in real life? Your insurance has a $3,000 deductible, which means until you personally pay that amount out of pocket, your insurance might as well not exist. Every visit comes with a copay, $50, $70, sometimes $100, and most importantly, everything requires money up front, paid now. Not at the end of the month, not when your paycheck hits, but right there at the front desk with your insurance card in your hand and your bank account already empty. So when someone says, just go to the doctor regularly, they're quietly assuming you have a few $100s ready to float. When they say just get insurance, they're assuming your deductible isn't a number that makes your stomach drop. And when they say just budget for it, they're assuming you have room to allocate, not that you're patching leaks just to stay afloat. The problem here isn't that you don't understand healthcare. You know early care is better. You know prevention is cheaper than treatment. You're not ignorant. The problem is that you're being sold the most expensive version of healthcare, the version that only activates when things have already gone wrong, the version you enter through the emergency room, not the clinic, the version where delay isn't a choice but a consequence of not having cash at the right moment. This system doesn't fail because you ignored good advice. It works exactly as designed. It favors people with buffers and punishes people without them. And once you see it that way, you start to realize the issue was never about doing things right or wrong. The issue is that you're being forced to buy survival at the highest possible price simply because you were poor at the wrong time. And this is where things start to come into focus, because the story you just heard isn't limited to healthcare. It's a pattern that shows up in almost every corner of American life. A modern version of what people used to call the boots theory updated for 2026. It's no longer just about boots or toilet paper. This is the poverty premium, the price you pay simply for not having cash up front. Let's start with something very familiar: work clothes. Someone with money can walk into a decent store and buy a pair of office shoes for $180 and a professional outfit for $250. Not cheap, but they're made well. Real leather, solid stitching. They last 3 to 5 years. No peeling soles, no worn knees. Nothing that makes you look sloppy in an important meeting. Spread over time, the annual cost is actually pretty low. Now look at someone who doesn't have that kind of money up front. They need to go to work right now. They need to look presentable right now. So they walk into a discount store and buy a $40 pair of shoes and a $60 outfit. It looks fine for the first few months. Then the sole starts coming apart. The fabric thins out. The seams split. 3 months later, they have to replace it. And then again. Over 3 years, they end up spending more than the person who bought quality in the first place, but they're always stuck in this state of good enough, never finished, never stable. And in a workplace where first impressions quietly shape opportunity, they're also paying another invisible cost, being judged as less professional, less reliable, less secure. Now shift to basic healthcare, where the difference is even sharper. If you have money, you buy generic medication in a 90-day supply. The cost per pill is much lower. One payment buys you 3 months of stability. No weekly pharmacy trips. No wondering if you can afford it this time. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't pay up front for 90 days. You buy 7 days at a time. Each pill costs more. You come back every week. You pay a copay every time. And if 1 week you're short on cash, you skip doses. Skipped doses lead to worse outcomes. Worse outcomes lead to higher costs. You're not buying expensive medication because you chose to. You're buying expensive medication because you can't afford the cheap option. Then there's electricity and energy, something most people barely think about, but that quietly drains you every month. A family with money can buy energy-efficient appliances, a washer, a fridge, an AC unit. The upfront cost is higher, but the monthly power bill is significantly lower. Year after year, those savings compound. Meanwhile, many families are stuck using old, inefficient appliances. Not because they don't know newer ones save money, but because they can't afford to replace them. The result is higher bills every single month. Not once, not temporarily, but indefinitely. Poverty doesn't just make you pay more once, it makes you pay more continuously, quietly, with no finish line. If you take a step back and look at the full picture, you start to see this isn't random. It's a form of price discrimination based on upfront cash. Not based on who you are, but on how much you can pay right now. If you can pay up front, you get access to the good price. If you can't, you're locked out. No coupons, no alternative. Just the more expensive version of the exact same thing. This is where a lot of people get poverty wrong. They think the problem is behavior, habits, personal choices. But when you look at these examples, you see the problem is structural. The system isn't just selling products, it's selling access to lower prices. And that access is reserved for people who already have money. If you don't, you're not just buying the same things for more. You're buying a life with more friction. Every step takes more effort. Every decision comes with an extra toll. This is the poverty premium in modern American life. It's not loud. No one announces it. There's no line item that says poor tax. But it's everywhere. In your closet, in your medicine cabinet, on your electric bill. And each individual cost might not feel shocking on its own, but over time they add up into a constant drag that keeps you in place. Not because you aren't moving, but because the ground under your feet is rougher than it is for everyone else. And once you see this, the right question stops being, why can't I save money, and becomes, which prices am I locked out of simply because I don't have cash up front? That's the real math of being broke. And if you think all of that is already bad enough, this is where we have to zoom in and really dissect how the American fee system actually works, not with big slogans or hot takes, but with small numbers repeated over and over, designed to slowly wear you down. This isn't about feelings or opinions anymore. This is forensic math. It's how money flows get bent when you don't have a buffer. Let's start with something that's marketed as a humane solution: paycheck advances or earned wage access. The idea sounds great. You already worked the hours, you're just getting your own money a little earlier. You need $100 to get through the week. Go ahead. They don't call it interest. They call it a service fee. $10, $15. Sounds small, sounds harmless. But stop for a second. You're advancing $100 for 7 days and paying $15 for that privilege. Annualize that rate blows past almost any credit card. But because it's packaged as wage access, it doesn't trigger the alarm in your head. You don't feel like you're borrowing at a predatory rate. You feel like you're surviving, and that's the key. The system doesn't need you to be stupid. It just needs you to be desperate. Then there's the credit score cascade. You're late on one bill. Just once. Not because you didn't want to pay, but because the money hadn't hit yet. Your score drops a few points. You don't notice right away. But a few months later, your auto insurance renews and the premium goes up. Not by a huge amount, $20 to $30 a month. But now it's a fixed cost. Month after month. Year after year. And here's the irony. Higher insurance doesn't make you safer. It just makes existing more expensive. A lower credit score isn't just a number. It's a filter. It decides whether you get access to the cheap version or the expensive version of the same service, and you don't get to negotiate. Now look at your phone and your internet, things that in America are no longer luxuries, but survival infrastructure. If you have good credit, you're on a family plan. You sign long-term contracts. You prepay annually. Your per-line cost is lower. Your cost per gig is cheaper. Everything is stable. But if your credit is bad, you're locked out of that ecosystem. You get pushed into prepaid plans. No contracts. No discounts. Higher prices per gig. Higher fees when you're late. And the cruel irony is that the people who need the internet the most to find work, pick up extra hours, learn new skills are the ones paying the most for it. Not because they use more, but because they're not trusted. So what do all of these examples have in common? They're not called interest. There's no APR table flashing red numbers at you. No obvious warning sign. Instead, there are fees. Convenience fees, access fees, risk fees. Fees because the system has decided you're unstable. Wealthy people pay interest when they choose to borrow to invest. Poor people pay fees just to keep existing inside the same system. And this is the most important thing to understand. These fees are not accidents. They are business models. They are optimized to hit you at your weakest moment when you need money now, when you don't have options, when you can't wait. The system doesn't need you to completely fail. It just needs you to stay right at the edge, always advancing, always paying a little extra to avoid falling off. When you add all of this up, wage advances, credit score cascades, phone fees, insurance penalties, a very clear picture emerges. Poor people aren't crushed by one massive debt all at once. They're slowly eroded by hundreds of small fees engineered to feel normal. And when everything is labeled a fee, no one talks about interest anymore. But the outcome is the same. Money flows steadily out of the people with the least in exchange for the privilege of staying in the game. That's why when we talk about poverty in America, talking about interest rates isn't enough. You're not just paying to borrow. You're paying for not having money. You're paying for being late. You're paying for not being able to pay up front. That's the real math running under the surface. And as long as you don't look directly at it, you'll keep feeling like you're doing something wrong when in reality you're just being charged for existing in a system that was never built for you. And once you've seen how money is pulled out of you through fees, the next thing to look at is what else is being taken from you every single day without being counted time. In America, being poor isn't just more expensive, it's more time-consuming. A lot more. And time, as you know, isn't just money, it's life energy. Let's start with where you live and how far you have to travel. People with money can live close to job centers, close to offices, close to hospitals, close to good schools. Their commutes are short, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They get home earlier, they can cook, rest, or work on something that actually improves their future. Meanwhile, many people don't choose to live far away. They're pushed out there. The rent is cheaper, but the real cost is the distance. An hour each way, gas, car maintenance, tolls, and more importantly, 2 hours of your day disappear. Those hours aren't paid, they aren't recorded, but they leave you more exhausted, less patient, and far less capable of thinking beyond tomorrow. Then there's food. In many low-income areas, you don't have a Trader Joe's or a Costco within walking distance. You have a dollar store. You have gas station food. That food costs more per calorie and delivers less nutrition. You're paying more for meals that fill you up fast but drain you over time. To buy better food, you have to travel farther. You need a car. You need time. You need to buy in bulk to get a better price. All of that assumes you already have money and energy. And when you don't, you're not just eating more expensively. You're paying with your health, with sick days, with steadily declining productivity. This is where the scarcity mindset really shows up. Poverty doesn't make you stupid. It overwhelms you. When every day is a survival equation, your brain prioritizes what's immediate. Paying this bill, getting to work on time, making sure nothing collapses today. In that state, you don't have the bandwidth to optimize. Not because you don't know what's better, but because you don't have the mental space to think about it. Optimization requires safety. It requires breathing room, and poverty takes both away. When you add long commutes, poor food access, and a constant state of mental strain together, you start to see another tax running alongside the financial one, a time tax. Poor people don't just pay more money for the same things. They also spend more hours just to maintain the same basic standard of living. And when time is taxed, so is your future. Not because you aren't trying hard enough, but because you're running inside a system where every step you take is heavier than it is for everyone else. And once you clearly see the layers of fees, the time tax, and the friction holding you in place, the next natural question is, where's the exit? Not a shortcut, not a get-rich-quick scheme, but a way to stop the bleeding. Escaping this trap doesn't start with making a lot more money. It starts with building buffers, layers of protection that keep the system from hitting you directly. The first layer is a cash buffer, $1,000, not to invest, not to flex, not to make your money work for you. $1,000 just sitting there. So when an unexpected fee shows up, you don't need a payday loan. So when a bill is late, you don't get hit with a late fee. So when something urgent comes up, you're not forced to buy the most expensive version of everything. This money doesn't make you richer on paper, but it makes existing cheaper. It's what stops small shocks from turning into long-term financial disasters. The second layer is a time buffer. This is the one most people overlook because it doesn't show up as a number. A time buffer is your ability to buy back your own time. Living closer to work, even if the rent is a little higher, the commute is shorter. Less gas, less exhaustion. Batching errands instead of running small tasks every single day and grouping things together so your brain can rest. The time you save isn't just free time. It's the energy to think further ahead, to avoid making decisions while you're depleted. When you have more time, life doesn't just get easier. You start to see options that were previously hidden. The third layer is a system buffer. This is where small changes create long-term impact. Switching to a bank that doesn't charge maintenance fees. Turning off overdraft completely so there's no such thing as accidentally paying $35. Setting up auto pay for critical bills with alerts so nothing catches you off guard. And once you have a cash buffer, choosing insurance with a higher deductible to lower your monthly premiums. You're not doing these things to optimize every penny. You're doing them to cut off recurring fees, the quiet drains that pull money out of you every month that you've been trained to accept as normal. And this is where side hustles come in, but not the way people usually talk about them. Not to spend more, not to reward yourself, but to permanently erase a fee. Working a few extra weekends to wipe out a high-interest balance and selling old stuff to build that first cash buffer. Every extra dollar isn't used to feel better today. It's used to make tomorrow cheaper. That's the critical difference. Getting out of the poverty trap isn't a leap. It's a process of building layers one at a time until the system can no longer hit you head-on. When you have buffers, you don't need to win big. You just need to stop losing. And in a system designed to grind you down a little every day, simply stopping the losses is already a massive win. And if you're feeling angry at this point, that's good. Just make sure you're angry at the right place. Not at yourself for thinking I should have done better. Not at the small decisions you made in the past when you were exhausted, short on cash, and backed into a corner. Be angry at the math behind it. Be angry at a system that makes the people with the least pay the most just to stay in the same place. Because here's the truth. A lot of people are doing everything right. They show up to work. They don't live recklessly. They do their best to make it work. And yet they still feel stuck like they're running on a treadmill with no off switch. not because they lack discipline, but because they're paying a poverty premium every single day without ever being given a name for it. And when you can't name something, you assume the problem is you. Once you understand that this is about fees, friction, and penalties added simply because you don't have a buffer, everything starts to shift. The shame fades. Curiosity takes its place. You start asking a different question. What is draining me the most right now? So here's the question I want you to answer right now. Where are you paying the poverty premium the hardest? Your phone plan, your car, insurance, housing, or something you've never really looked at before? Drop it in the comments. Not to complain, but to break it down. I read them and we'll audit these traps one by one concretely. And if you know someone who feels stuck but can't explain why, share this video with them. Not to lecture them, but to remind them they're not broken. This system is what needs to be examined. And if you want to keep pulling apart traps like this without preaching, without platitudes, just logic, math, and reality, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.